Stations along the U.S. East Coast are beginning to run out of fuel as North America's biggest petroleum pipeline races to recover from the
cyber attack, causing petrol shortages across the east of the United States.
Some are even hoarding gasoline out of fear that they won't have access to it very soon.
But don't put it in plastic bags.
The events of the Colonial Pipeline Hack all unfolded at a rapid pace. From the initial intrusion, to the company paying $4.4 million in ransom, and US President Joe Biden even declaring a state of emergency because of the attack. Before we look at the timeline, let's take a look at Colonial Pipeline themselves. The Colonial Pipeline is the largest pipeline system for refined oil products in the US. It began in 1962 to help move oil from the Gulf of Mexico to the East Coast states. The pipeline consists of 3 main tubes. It is 5,500 miles long and can carry 3 million barrels of fuel per day between Texas and New York. It delivers refined oil for gasoline, jet fuel, and home heating oil. Roughly 45% of all fuel consumed on the East Coast of America arrives via the pipeline system. On May 6, 2021, the initial intrusion began. When hackers accessed the Colonial Pipeline network, the attackers stole over 100 gigabytes of data within a 2-hour window. They did it with ease. The Colonial Pipeline hackers entered through the company's IT systems. The facts show that the attackers exploited 3 main vulnerabilities to gain access: an inactive VPN account, a leaked password, and a lack of multi-factor authentication. Many organizations use a VPN to provide secure, encrypted remote access into a corporate network. However, vulnerable VPN access is one of the most common ways hackers enter a network. It was clearly evident in the Colonial Pipeline attack that the hackers exploited a legacy VPN that shouldn't have been in use. While using VPNs to connect to a local resource is common, most don't realize the real threat VPNs bring to an organization. Older VPNs were known to be an all or nothing tool. Either a user has complete access to a network or none. With a VPN, there isn't any way to give partial access or implement granular controls so that users can only access the specific areas of the network they need and nothing more. This risk is the direct opposite of the zero trust model, which is so critical to enhancing government cybersecurity strategies that it was included in the new executive order on the nation's cybersecurity. Zero trust is a cybersecurity approach that implements least privilege access and unauthorized protocols, so the correct users are granted restricted access to only the ports and applications needed. Without control on what a user can access, the user has access to every part of a network, even the parts that are off limits. The VPN tool also doesn't bode well with third-party accountability. VPNs don't offer ways to monitor and audit third-party vendor activity within the network, so there's no visibility into third-party session activity. If something suspicious happens, VPNs don't offer the historical view of network sessions to trace back to the source of the issue. It's reported that the password used in the cyber attack was included in a batch of leaked passwords on the dark web, which can lead to the assumption that password security is not a priority. The Verizon 2021 data breach investigations report found that 61% of data breaches are caused by leaked credentials, which shows that credentials are still highly regarded assets for hackers and must be protected. In fact, the largest password leak in history occurred in June 2021. A collection of 8.4 billion passwords make up the stolen credential forum, further proving the value of stolen credentials, whether personal or professional. In this particular hack, multi-factor authentication could have prevented the hacker from gaining access to its internal systems. This simple, but yet extremely effective security measure serves as an ultimate goalkeeper for those trying to access private networks. However, its power is still overlooked by many organizations. Only 40% of participants in the 2021 Secure Link Institute survey rated multi-factor authentication as very important. Even though the security method is seemingly undervalued by organizations, it's still proven to be one of the most effective means of secure private networks and systems. On May the 7th, before anyone at Colonial Pipeline knew about the breach, employees tried to access their network to start work as per usual. Upon logging in, they were greeted with this message: "Welcome to Darkside. Your computers and servers are encrypted. Backups are deleted. We use strong encryption algorithms, so you cannot decrypt your data, but you can restore everything by purchasing a special program from us, Universal Decryptor. This program will restore all your network." They also had instructions on how to recover their data. As you can see, they claim to have stolen data including financial, private information, and partners' documents, and were willing to provide evidence. Clearly, the attackers infected the Colonial Pipeline IT network with ransomware that affected many computers. The pipeline's operational technology systems that actually moved the oil were not directly compromised during the attack. However, to prevent the attack from spreading, the Colonial Pipeline shut down their entire operation. When they did this, they also notified law enforcement and the federal government of the attack, and called the highly regarded security firm Mandiant to investigate the attack. It was reported that within hours after the attack, the company paid a ransom of nearly 75 bitcoins, worth roughly 4.4 million US at the time. This was paid to the hackers in exchange for a decryption tool. The CEO of Colonial Pipeline, Joseph Blount, said that paying the ransom was a difficult decision, but one that he felt was the right thing to do for the country. Some of the senators stated that Colonial Pipeline didn't consult the US government regarding its decision to pay the ransom. Blount said that it was his understanding that the decision about the ransom was up to the company. He added that the company didn't have a ransom counter strategy, but the FBI was contacted within hours, and that the company invested more than 200 million in the IT systems beforehand. Now, one question you might be asking is who was responsible for the Colonial Pipeline hack? Well, as you might have guessed from the message left on the Colonial Pipeline network, the hackers were identified as a group called Darkside. Unlike the Sith, the Darkside hackers are mainly located in Russia and some other Eastern European countries. This hacking group is not known to be state-sponsored, and it's likely that the Russian government had nothing to do with it. This hacking group has adopted the Ransomware as a Service model, RAAS, a business model between ransom operators and affiliates in which affiliates pay to launch ransomware attacks developed by the operators. It's reported that the group takes around 25% of the gains after successful attacks. They claim to be a modern-day Robin Hood group that would never go after healthcare or non-profit organizations, but would instead focus on big companies. They claim that they often donated to charity as part of their mission. This image was captured from Darkside's website before the website was removed. It shows the rules that the group works by, and the guarantees if you choose them for the service. The rules show that they will not attack any medicine companies, funeral services, educational groups, non-profit organizations, and government sectors. Moving on, 2 days later, on the 9th of May, President Joe Biden issued an emergency declaration in 17 different states due to the Colonial Pipeline shutdown. This emergency declaration provides relief for commercial motor vehicle operators while providing direct assistance to support emergency relief efforts, including transporting gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products into the affected states. So, who was affected by the attack? Well, there was significant and immediate effect when the Colonial Pipeline hack occurred. It affected the airline industry, where there was a jet fuel shortage for many carriers, including American Airlines. There was also disruption at other airports, including Atlanta and Nashville. Fear of a gas shortage caused people to panic buy and create long lines at gas stations in many states, including Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Virginia, and many others. There was also a spike in the average price at the gas pump, with the regular gas topping $3 a gallon. In the aftermath of the Colonial Pipeline shutdown, panic buying did lead to some real shortages in certain areas as consumers bought more gasoline than usual. In some states, people were even filling plastic bags with gasoline. This triggered a US Consumer Product Safety Commission alert, warning customers to only use containers meant for fuel. On Wednesday, May the 12th, 5 days after the pipeline was shut down, Colonial Pipeline restarted their pipeline operations. The restart began at about 5 PM Eastern Time, and the operations resumed. However, it took several days for the delivery supply chain to return to normal. Next, fast forward almost a month to June 7th. It was announced that the Department of Justice had recovered 63.7 Bitcoin, worth approximately $2.3 million from the attackers. Experts say it was a surprising outcome to an increasingly frequent and severe crime. Ransomware is a very seldom recovery, said April Falcon Doss, Executive Director of the Institute for Technology Law and Policy, who described it as a really big win for the government. What we don't know is whether or not this is going to pave the way for future similar success. That's because there are several unexplained factors that contributed to the operation's success. Victims of these attacks are given very specific instructions about when and where to send the money, just like the Colonial Pipeline attack. So it's not uncommon for investigators to trace payment sums to the cryptocurrency accounts, typically Bitcoin, set up by the criminal organizations behind the extortion. What is unusual is to be able to unlock those accounts to recoup the funds. Court documents released in the Colonial Pipeline case say the FBI got in by using the encryption key linked with the Bitcoin account to which the ransom was delivered. However, officials have not disclosed how they got that key. One of the reasons criminals like to use Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is the obscurity of the entire system, as well as the idea that funds in any given cryptocurrency wallet can be accessed only with a complex digital key. The private key is, from a technology perspective, the thing that made it possible to seize these funds, Doss said. She said that cyber attackers will go to great lengths to guard any information that can lead someone to associate the key with an individual or organization. They're going to really try and cover their tracks. This is the warrant that was signed, allowing any authorized law enforcement officer to seize the property from the cryptocurrency address. As you can see, the warrant was signed on the day the attack happened and the ransom was paid. They have the crypto wallet address, but how did they know that they were going to get the private key? Or did they already have it? Well, officials likely got the private key in one of three ways. One possibility is that the FBI was tipped off by a person associated with the attack, either a person or group behind the scheme, or someone associated with DarkSide. A second theory is that the FBI uncovered the key thanks to careless criminals. Deputy FBI Director Paul Abbott said that the Bureau has been investigating DarkSide since 2020. It is probable that in their surveillance, officials may have had search warrants that enabled them to access their emails or other communication by one or more of the people who participated in the scheme. And through that, they were able to access the private key because maybe somebody emailed something to help them track it down. The third possibility is that the FBI tracked down the key by leveraging information it got from Bitcoin or from the cryptocurrency exchange, where the money has been bouncing from one account to the other since it was first paid. It's not known whether any of the exchanges have been willing to cooperate with the FBI or to respond to the agency's subpoenas. But if they are, it could be a game changer in fighting ransomware attacks. What's not likely is that the FBI somehow hacked the key on its own. While it is theoretically possible, the idea that the FBI would have, through some sort of brute force decryption activity, figured out the private key seems to be the last likely scenario. Regardless, if authorities are able to consistently remove the profits from the attackers, they'll likely eliminate the crime. That being said, the attackers made an unusual error in this case by failing to keep the money moving. The 2.3 million that ultimately was recovered was still in the same Bitcoin account it had been delivered to. You really don't see that with cybercriminals. It makes you think, is there something more behind this attack? For instance, there's another scam where a company is tricked into submitting a payment using phony instructions. Funds get wired to accounts and legitimate banks. The banks don't realize that the account was set up by a fraudulent actor, and as soon as those funds hit the account, they are wired out of the account by the criminals almost instantly. Within 72 hours, the funds are gone and very hard to track or trace. DOS suspects, in the attack on Colonial Pipeline, the attackers were overly confident that the money couldn't be traced and that the private key was secure. Anyway, the day after, on June 8th, is when the Congressional hearing on the attack occurred. Colonial Pipeline's chief executive took a defensive stance during a Senate hearing on Tuesday, casting his company as victim for forces beyond its control. In his remarks to the Congress since the breach, CEO Joseph Blount said that being extorted by cybercriminals is not a position any company wants to be in. He also defends the controversial call to pay the ransom. When questioned about the breach and the single leaked password, Blount said, "It was a complicated password. I want to be clear on that. It was not Colonial 123 type password." He later added that the company is now compliant with new cybersecurity regulations, almost to a T. Blount apologised for the shutdown's effect on customers and called for the public and private sectors to develop even more robust tools and intelligence to prevent future ransomware attacks. "We are deeply sorry for the impact that this attack has had, but are heartened by the resilience of our country and our company," Blount said. The hearing delved into the company's preparedness and response, as well as cast a spotlight on the broader cybersecurity posture of the US energy infrastructure. Though companies such as Colonial play a crucial role in the nation's supply chain, they are largely left on their own with respects to cybersecurity. Blount said that there are also limits to what a single company can do to prevent these sorts of attacks. Colonial Pipeline can, and we will, continue investing in cybersecurity and strengthening our systems. But criminal gangs and nation states are always evolving, sharpening their tactics and working to find new ways to infiltrate the systems of American companies and the American government. These attacks will continue to happen, and critical infrastructure will continue to be the target. Blount said he decided to pay the ransom that hackers demanded in order to have every tool available to us to swiftly get the pipeline back up and running. He added that it was one of the toughest decisions he had ever had to make. In response to questions from Senator Maggie Hassan, he acknowledged that his company's disaster preparedness plan included no discussion of ransom or action to ransom. Hassan said, in a statement published shortly after the hearing, "I've talked with small school districts in my state of New Hampshire that are better prepared for cyber attacks than the Colonial Pipeline was," Hassan said. Colonial Pipeline operates critical infrastructure that families in our economy rely on. It is unacceptable that it was so unprepared for a cyber attack, and is a wake-up call that more must be done to secure our critical infrastructure. So now, just over 2 years after the Colonial Pipeline attack happened, what have we learned? And what have we done over the past 2 years? Well, as it turns out, the Colonial Pipeline attack wasn't a pivotal moment in cybersecurity, because nothing has really changed since then. While the pipeline attack did get a lot of press coverage, put a spotlight on operational technology networks, both ransom and cyber attacks targeting OT infrastructure have continued, and by many accounts have increased in frequency since Colonial. We want to believe that things are getting better, but the truth is, maybe they are not. We spend millions of dollars on new security tools that never seem to work as described and continue to fail us over and over. After the attack, operational technology came into focus and we learned just how insecure some of it is. That was followed by the usual InfoSec response of a spending increase, lots of articles, new tools, conferences, etc. Now that we are in a time of cutbacks, security is going to suffer. It's a cost after all, so if anything, we may see a rise in successful attacks. There's so much fatigue across InfoSec groups everywhere, especially when it comes to an overload of security tools that add to the noise without improving anything. The correct response to the pipeline hack would have been to take stock of where we are, accept that we need some changes, and go from there. Instead, just more of the same. The economics of the problem remain in favour of the bad guys. They make a profit by causing problems. If things are going to get better, we have to stop doing more of the same. Successful security is about identifying problems and developing solutions based on that. Furthermore, those solutions need to actually work. We need to confront the challenge of a consistently expanding, never-ending attack surface. We have to accept that the only way to maintain an effective cybersecurity posture is to try and be proactive. We have to realize that there is no one size fits all. There is no security silver bullet. What works for a large bank is not going to work for a small industrial company. Once we get comfortable with that, we will be in a better place to actually improve the situation. Every day can be a pivotal moment in cybersecurity if we choose to keep up the hard work of getting better. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like. And also, if you want to learn about the SolarWinds attack, which some regard it as the largest attack the world has ever seen, click the video on screen.